Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 27 and chapter 27 in the book of Psalms. My name's Meg, and if you're just joining me, I have invited you into my personal devotional time where I am diving into the book of Psalms. So I'm just going to jump right in here. I'm going to be reading out of my New Living Translation today. It's one of my favorite translations, along with the ESV. And our theme today is God offers help for today and hope for the future. Unwavering confidence in God is our antidote to fear and loneliness. So I'm going to jump right in with verse 1, which says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, so why should I be afraid? The Lord is my fortress, protecting me from danger, so why should I tremble? When evil people come to devour me, when my enemies and foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will remain confident. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the one thing I seek the most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple. For he will conceal me there when trouble comes. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. Then I will hold my head high above my enemies who surround me. At his sanctuary I will offer sacrifices with shouts of joy, singing and praising to the Lord with music. Hear me as I pray, O Lord. Be merciful and answer me. My heart has heard you say, 'Come and talk with me.' And my heart responds, 'Lord, I am coming.' Do not turn your back on me. Do not reject your servant in anger. You have always been my helper. Don't leave me now. Don't abandon me, O God of my salvation. Even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. Teach me how to live, O Lord. Lead me along the right path, for my enemies are waiting for me. Do not let me fall into their hands, for they accuse me of things I've never done. With every breath they threaten me with violence, yet I am confident I will see the Lord's goodness, while I am here in the land of the living. Wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord." So as I'm reading this, what stuck out to me immediately was, let me get that verse, was right here when David is saying that there's an army that surrounds him. Let's see, right here. "Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will remain confident." And it makes me think of two things. The first thing it made me think about was like, wow, when we think about like an army attacking us, at least for me, I have never had an entire army attack me. But David is speaking literally here, because multiple times he had entire armies of people attacking him, and he was a great soldier. But it also made me think of 2 Kings, specifically chapter 6. I'm gonna start in verse 8, and my focus verse is going to be on 17, but I think having the background of this is important. So it says, "When the king of Aram was at war with Israel, he would confer with his officers and say, 'We will mobilize our forces at such and such a place.' But immediately Elisha, the man of God, would warn the king of Israel, 'Do not go near that place, for the Arameans are planning to mobilize their troops there.' So the king of Israel would send the word to the place, indicating by the man of God. Time and time again, Elisha warned the king so that he would be on alert there. The king of Aram became very upset over this. He called his officers together and demanded, 'Which of you is a traitor? Who has been informing the king of Israel of my plans?' 'It is not us, my lord the king,' one of the officers replied. 'Elisha is a prophet in Israel and tells the king of Israel even the words you speak in the privacy of your bedroom. Go and find out where he is,' the king commanded, 'so I can send troops to seize him.' And the report came back. 'Elisha is at Dothan.' So one night, the king of Aram sent a great army with many chariots and horses to their surrounding city. When the servant of the man of God got up early the next morning and went outside, there were troops, horses, and chariots everywhere. 'Oh, sir, what will we do now?' the young man cried to Elisha. 'Do not be afraid,' Elisha told him, 'for there are more on our side than on theirs.' Then Elisha prayed, 'O Lord, open the eyes and let him see.' The Lord opened the young man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw that the hillside surrounding Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. As the Aramean army advanced toward him, Elisha prayed, 'O Lord, please make them blind.' So the Lord struck them with blindness as Elisha had asked. Then Elisha went out and told them, "You have come the wrong way. This isn't the right city. Follow me, and I will take you to the man you are looking for." And he led them to the city of Samaria. And as soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha prayed, "O Lord, now open their eyes and let them see." So the Lord opened their eyes, and they discovered that they were in the middle of Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them there, he shouted to Elisha, "My father, should I kill them? Should I kill them?" "Of course not," Elisha replied. "Do we kill prisoners of war? Give them food and drink, and send them home again to their master." So the king made a great feast for them and sent them home to their master. And after that, Aramean raiders stayed away from the land of Israel. And I really want to focus on verse 17, which said, "Then Elisha prayed for the young man's eyes to be opened, and when he looked up, he saw that the hillside around Elijah was filled with horses and chariots of fire." And this is immediately what it made me think of, because oftentimes we are so focused on what's happening in front of us that we forget that this is actually spiritual warfare that we are engaging in, and all around us we have the Lord's angels protecting us, and God is the God of heaven's armies, and there is no more powerful army than God's army in heaven. And so I think about this, and I think about how we see so many verses in the Bible that talk about how the angel of the Lord encamps around us. And so whenever I'm going through a difficult time, or I'm struggling, or I feel like I'm facing an army, whatever it is, I remind myself of this, and I pray that the angels of the Lord would encamp around me. They would encircle me. They would protect me. They would be a hedge around me. The Lord is faithful. He is always a hedge of protection. He went with the Israelites when they were in exile, when they were going to the promised land. He was a cloud of smoke, and he was a pillar of fire. And so this is so important, and it's important because we need to remember that the Lord is with us and he is guiding us. But the thing that's most important about this is David is in peace here. Yes, there's a distressing situation that's happening, but he is putting his faith not in his own abilities, not in the abilities of those who are around him, but in the abilities of God. A lot of times we will seek God when we need him. Like, "Oh man, I'm having this struggle right now. I need you right now." But then when things are going well, we aren't seeking his presence. But David has a lifetime of seeking his presence. And actually his greatest desire is just to be in his presence. David is like, "Lord, my greatest desire is just to sit here and be in your presence and be with you and worship you." And that is such a beautiful heart mentality. And I think that's one of the reasons that David is called a man after God's own heart. Was David perfect? No. Did David mess up? Yes. Did David follow all the commands perfectly? No. Especially the command in Deuteronomy that talks about, it's Deuteronomy, I believe 17:17, that is very clear that kings should not have a lot of wives because they'll be a distraction. If you read through 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, you will see David acquires many wives. Culturally, that was a thing of the world at the time. The more wives you had, it showed of your great power. But David should not have done that. Anyway, that's an aside, but it's true. So he wasn't perfect, but he had a heart of worship, and his heart was solely focused on the Lord, being in his presence and seeking him for everything. And I think that's really important. We need to be seeking his help, his path, his direction in every single thing that we do. Not just like, "Oh, like, what should I do about this big situation?" How about seeking him in all these things? And this is a prime moment of like walking in the Spirit, being with the Spirit. The other day, I was at my church, and I just felt so strongly prompted by the Holy Spirit to like go talk to this person and give them a hug. I was like, okay. So I went over and I did it, and immediately that person was like, "Thank you so much. Like, I've been really going through it. I really needed this." And that was all I was supposed to do. Just go over, say hello, give them a hug, and that was all that I needed to do. And so that was important, because if I hadn't followed that prompting, then God wouldn't have been able to use me in that moment. But it was small. I could have easily been like, "Nah, I don't feel like hugging anyone today. I'm going to go." No, the Lord had me do this, and it was important, and so I did it. And so he's allowing us to walk in the Spirit. We also have the gifts of the Spirit, which are important. We can have, just like Elijah here, who's having all these words, who knows all these things, who's having all this prophecy. We have these gifts, and the Lord can give us things. He can give us knowledge that other people haven't told us, and we can use it to help further his kingdom. And it might be like someone is struggling and you're praying with them, and the Lord gives you information, and then you're able to pray to that, and they're like, "Wow, like, that's exactly what I'm going through." That is important. It can happen in our jobs. It can happen at the drive-thru. It can happen while you're just standing there. it's important that we're always listening. And I love this. Verse 8. I'm going actually to verse 7. Hear me as I pray, O Lord, be merciful and answer my prayer. My heart has heard you say, come and talk with me. And my heart responds, Lord, I am coming. What a beautiful depiction of the relationship that we should have with the Lord. He wants us to seek him. One of my favorite verses is cast your cares on the Lord because he cares for you. He cares about us. Have a daily session with the Lord. Heck, have two. Have one in the morning where you're like, Lord, I got to pour my heart out to you today because I need to stay focused on you. And then at the end of the day, don't be afraid to share with him, Lord, this was frustrating to me today. Lord, I didn't react in the way that I wanted to today. Lord, I'm feeling really frustrated about this situation today. David not one time hid his feelings from the Lord. When David was mad, he was like, Lord, I'm really mad about this situation. When he is sad, he's like, Lord, I'm really sad about this situation. When he's happy, he's like, Lord, thank you. But every time he comes, even in his despair, even in his trouble, even in his time of concern and worry, even when there's armies coming to kill him, by the end of the Psalms, he's always like, but I am trusting in you, because we are reminded of God's faithfulness. We are reminded that God has been with us. He has formed us in our mother's womb, and he has been with us since our very first breath. It is our choice to accept the invitation of salvation. The second we accept Jesus into our hearts, the second we say, Jesus, you are Lord of our lives, then our separation from God is done. We have peace with God, which allows us to have the peace of God, which allows us to have the peace of others. And it's so important. The other thing that I love is David here. He knows that these armies are coming for him, and it also reminds me of one of my favorite verses. I know I've talked about it a lot. I'll talk about it again. Exodus 14:14, where the Lord will go ahead of you and fight for you. You just need to be silent. David is sitting here and he's like, look, I know these people are coming for me. I know this is happening. But he's not going without seeking God first. If he goes and he does it in his own strength, he is not going to have the blessing of the Lord, so he's not going to be there. Oftentimes, especially in this society, silence is seen as a sign of weakness, but it's actually a sign of strength. In moments where the Lord is calling you to be silent, we are showing that our trust is in God. Our trust is that God is going out. He is making our ways straight. We do not have to worry, because God's going to fight for us. God is going to be there for us. I heard a beautiful quote this morning when I was listening during my devotional time. And it was by Billy Graham, and he was like, don't waste your time on people who are set on just misunderstanding you. And he talked about Nehemiah, how Nehemiah, like, those enemies were just set on misunderstanding him. They slandered him, they spread lies about him, and Nehemiah was like, I am doing something too important to get off this wall. And he consulted God through it. And so David is like, look, I know I'm in a bad situation in the natural, but here is God, and I'm coming and I'm seeking him. And so I just wanted to read this last little commentary before I close, which says, David knew from experience what it meant to wait for the Lord. He had been anointed king at age 16, but didn't become king until he was 30. During the interim, he had been chased through the wilderness by jealous King Saul. David had to wait on God for the fulfillment of the promise to his reign. Later, the fulfillment of his promise came, but he was then chased by rebellious son Absalom. Waiting for God is not easy. Often it seems that he isn't answering our prayers or doesn't understand the urgency of our situation. That kind of thinking implies that God is not in control or is not fair, but God is worth waiting for. Lamentations 3:24-26 calls us to hope and wait in the Lord, because often God uses times of waiting to refresh, renew, and teach us. Make good use of your waiting time by discovering what God may be trying to teach you in them. And so in times of waiting, it can be difficult, but it's our training season. It's our time to be able to differentiate God's voice before everyone else's voice. We talked about in Psalm 23 yesterday how we will know his voice, but we will only know his voice if we're taking this time to go in the secret place and hear his voice and discern his voice. And so it makes me think about, like, as a teacher myself, there are some times where my students want to jump ahead, but they aren't ready to jump ahead yet. So for example, like, they want to write an entire book, but they don't know how to write a sentence yet. And so yes, the goal of wanting to write a book is beautiful and wonderful, and I love it and I encourage it, and we get them there. But I can't say before they know how to write a sentence, all right guys, like, just go ahead, just write a book. Because they need the training period. They need the skills that we are teaching them of how to write a sentence, how to write a story, how to write a paragraph. And by the end of the year, they have written so many stories, but they needed that training period to get to where they are going. And so honestly, our wilderness times are terrible. They are struggling, but they are giving us the skills that we need to get to where we're going. Oftentimes, God shows us and we don't realize the wilderness time. And sometimes, like when I read the scriptures, I forget that like between verse 14 and 17, there was like 20 years in between that. It's 3 verses for us. And it's just so important to trust in the Lord and the waiting. And it also makes me think, honestly, of my grandparents who had a ministry. And when the Lord had called them first, they had to like renovate the entire building. And my grandma was like, okay, let's do this. And my grandpa was like, we are going to wait on the Lord because he has given us this promise. And so he will come through. And the Lord came through. In fact, they were sitting at their dinner table. And all of a sudden, they're going to knock on this door, and this stranger came, and this man just came in and was like, here you go. And it was solid silver bars, which was enough to pay for what they needed to do in the building. It was enough for heat. When they were looking for a new roof, people came, people donated, and my grandma and grandpa, I love this story, they were $20 short. And so my grandma was like, hey, like we'll just pay the $20. And my grandpa was like, no, like we're gonna wait on the Lord. And the very next day, this woman on the street walked up to my grandma and was like, oh, here's $20, like the Lord has told me to give this to you. God's gonna provide, but in that waiting time, we are learning to trust in him and trust in his timing. And so even though like we're excited, we want to do it, like there are some promises that I'm currently waiting on, and sometimes I feel discouraged, but then I remember that my strength comes when I wait in the Lord, and if I try to go before him, it's not going to work. And so my big takeaway today is to continuously wait and trust in the Lord. And today, in the moments I'm feeling discouraged, like, Lord, I know you've promised this, when is it coming? Lord, I'm struggling in this. Pausing and being completely transparent with him. Even at work today, I'm gonna like take some time during my lunch break and just like take a pause and seek him and be like, Lord, like this is where I need you to step in because I'm feeling discouraged and I don't want to hide my heart from you. So I'm very excited for tomorrow. Tomorrow's day 28. And thanks for joining me. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!